3, 2.
I got everybody pregnant with Barry Katz and semen.
I'm not comfortable with the tone this is taking.
If you're undeniable, you will not be denied.
If you want to be successful in show business, you get yourself a true white manager like Barry Katz.
Being a manager is just turning no's into yeses.
Creating holy shit moments. Undeniable.
You're fucking firing me up, Katz.
I love this man.
Is there anything else I should know?
You're on. What? Now I'm on the air. Barry Katz back in the house. Let's do this.
Nick Swardson.
Hi, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you. Hi, Barry.
Nick, every time I see you, I just feel unconditional love. Is that wrong?
No, it's gorgeous.
There's just something about you that's always been so generous and kind and a really special person, not just to other performers, but to me. And I've always been grateful for it. And I have so many unbelievable memories of working with you. And my most incredible memory that I have of you, which is probably an inspirational moment for anybody listening, is I got a call from you to come into my office on a Saturday. I said, what do you need? He said, I need to use your fax machine. And you came into my office with your backpack and shorts, walked up 20 flights of stairs because you don't take elevators. You're all sweaty, and you put the backpack down and you take out a spiral notebook. And for those of you who are too old to remember, the spiral notebook being the one where you rip off the pages and those little pieces of things go everywhere. And I said, what do you need to fax? And I'm thinking he's going to give me a Word document or papers or something, but he pulls out this notebook. And I said, what's that? He said, I'm going to fax a screenplay to Jamie Kennedy that I wrote. I said, okay, we'll take care of it. And he opens up the notebook, and handwritten is the entire screenplay. Handwritten. And he starts pulling off the pages. My floor looks like a paper factory. And we're faxing one by one. And that thing that you did, you created on your own in a notebook without any technology, became Malibu's Most Wanted. And it was your first writing credit, and you were also an actor in the film.
Yeah.
And it changed your life forever, and you created it in a spiral notebook.
Yeah, I remember that. That was crazy. Yeah, it's funny when I think back of, like, you know, people just don't realize, like, back in the day, comedians, we had notebooks. Like, that's what we had. We had carried it with us at all times. And I would have, like, a little notebook in my back pocket, and I would jot down my notes and everything. You know, nobody had phones or anything. And I would jot down notes and jokes and all these ideas, and I never didn't have my notebook with me. And I still have a lot of my old notebooks. But I remember one time, I'm a big drinker, really good at it. And when I was younger, I used to drink and drive, which is horrible. But that was when you're young, you're fucking dumb. And I was driving from the Improv. I'd gotten off stage, and I was going to a bar to meet some friends, and I got pulled over. I'd had about 7 drinks, and I got pulled over by the police. And they could get the fuck out of the car or whatever. And they're like, empty your pockets. Are you on drugs, whatever? And I'm like, no, I don't do drugs. And they go, you know, empty your pockets, whatever. And so I had my little notebook, and they go, where are you coming from? I go, I'm a comedian. I just got off stage. And they're like, okay, have you been drinking? And I go, I'm not going to lie. I had 1 drink because I do stand-up comedy, and it's really scary. This is like 15 years ago. I'm like, it's really scary, so I have to have 1 drink. And the cops are like, oh, really? You do comedy? And I was like, yeah. And they take my little spiral notebook, and they go, what's that? And I go, oh, these are my jokes. And they go, okay. So they start flipping through the notebook, and they go, what's this joke? And I would tell them, and they're like, no, it's pretty good. And they're like, and they go, what's this? I'm like, it's an idea I have for a movie. They're like, what's the idea? I'm like, blah, blah, blah. They're like, yeah, that could work. And they're like, what's this? And I'm like, it's just another joke. So I told them another joke. And they just look at each other and like, what should we do? And the cop's like, this kid's a fucking comedian, man. Let him go. It's like, just let me go. I'll never forget that. My little notebook. What's it? Yeah, all right.
Do you carry a notebook in your glove compartment that's a fake notebook just for the police when you get pulled over?
I should. No, it's amazing. I always tell cops, like I never get into trouble, but like if I ever got pulled over or something, I would always say I was going to a gig, because it just immediately disarms them right away. So like I had a car. I don't know if you remember my old car. It was a piece of shit. Yeah, I don't know if you do. It was an old like Impala.
Of course.
It was like illegal plates, one headlight. I was getting pulled over all the time. And I would always say I was a comedian. I don't care what time of day it was. I'd get pulled over at noon. And they'd be like, hey, yeah, this is all illegal. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm going to a gig. I'm a comedian. And they would always be like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. Oh my God. And they were like, oh yeah, okay, go. It's always like the get out of jail free card. I'm a comedian.
Do you mind if I go back to that time when you were 19 or 20 and coming into the office with the notebook? Do you mind telling our audience your process as a teenager from cradle to grave, from the first thought in your mind about Malibu's Most Wanted, which was Suckers with a Z,
yeah,
to it getting made and you going on set for the first time? Like, could you give us the kind of the Reader's Digest of your process?
I'll tell you how
that was your first process of doing that.
This is how it all went down. So I was moved to LA from New York, and my agent called me up, and he goes, I was trying to get into this club in Arizona, the Tempe Improv. It's one of the biggest clubs. So they called me. He's like, hey, they need an MC for the week with Jamie Kennedy. And I didn't want to MC. I didn't want to host. I was like, I'm above that. But I was like, you know what? It'd be cool to meet Jamie Kennedy, hang out with him.
And just so the audience knows, the three normal traditional slots are MC, which is the lowest spot, feature or middle, which is right before the performer, and the performer. And if you're doing a concert venue or one-person shows, the opening slot would be akin to between the feature and the MC status.
Correct. So I was like, okay, I'll go to Arizona. So I go and open up for Jamie, and we become friends, and we're in his hotel room, and he goes, you know that character I do on stage of like the white rapper? And I was like, yeah. He goes, I think there's something there, like maybe a movie or a show. And I was like, yeah. I go, and I just rattled off 3 scenes right away. I go, you should have this scene. This would be a funny scene. This would be a funny scene. And Jamie goes, do you want to write the movie? And I was like, I can't remember how old I was, 20 fucking something. And I was like, I've never written a movie before.
Did you tell him that?
Yeah, I go, I don't fucking, what? And he goes, just get a fucking screenwriting book and write it. And I was like, okay. He's like, I'll pay you out of my own pocket. So
did you buy Sid Field's book screenplay?
I bought Sid Field's book.
Screenplay.
Yeah. I bought that.
Which is a very hard book to read in the beginning. It's very challenging.
It's very challenging, but like it does walk you through it. So I read that and I was like, okay. So I started writing it and I wrote like 20, 25 pages in. I wrote the first act. And Jamie was like, fucking this is awesome. Because it used to be a rated R movie and it was like a buddy comedy. So it would have been me and Jamie. So he loved it. He was like, this is fucking great.
Handwritten stuff.
Yeah. So I started, this is like when I was still party, but this is when I was like really partying. And Jamie's like, dude, you got to finish this. He's like, you're fucking getting drunk all the time. And I was like, I know. He's like, here's the deal. Move in with me. And fucking finish it. I'll pay you out of my own pocket. And I was like, okay.
What did he pay you?
He gave me a couple grand. So I was like, okay. So then I finished it. And then that's when I was in New York. Then I went back to New York and kept writing it and kept finishing it on my notebook. And that's when I faxed him the pages.
Now, can I ask you a question? So I presume that you're writing scenes and faxing them to them, giving to them, going to a copy center and making copies of it. But the final thing that you brought to my office that day, I presume that you took all your pages and then wrote it.
That's what I did.
105 pages. Or whatever it was, or 100 pages.
Yeah, it was all pieces.
And you made it all one piece in the notebook to fax to him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, it used to be called, like you said, Suckers. And it was me and him, and it was rated R, and it was fucking nuts. And that almost got made. I mean, we had producers, we had everything lined up. And Jamie had that show at Warner Brothers, Jamie Kennedy Experiment, which is an amazing show. And Warner Brothers was like, we need a movie for you. So he handed them that script. And they're like, this is fucking insane. So they were like, someone's got to like tone it down a notch. So they had somebody come in and like kind of tone it down to make it PG-13.
They used his showrunners for his show,
Fax and Adam.
Fax Bar and Adam Small, who created Mad TV.
Correct.
And that was a tough moment, I believe, navigationally wise, because as you know, and probably Adam, your friend Adam Sandler would say, don't settle. You know, don't be in a situation where you compromise what you did originally. And so Fax and Adam, which was hard for him, were his showrunners who I believe he trusted on Jamie Kennedy Experiment.
Yeah.
And then they came in, and it was their job to help tone it down. And that's where the edge came off of it.
Yeah, 100%. And here's another side note about the business, is that anybody will just fuck you. So I wrote that script. Fax Adam came in, did a rewrite, and then they tried to squeeze me out of it. So, and these are guys that I knew, they were friends of mine, I thought. So all of a sudden I get a call, and my agent was like, you're getting squeezed out of the script. They're taking you to, what's it called? With the guild.
Yeah, they were going to do a dispute, but the thing is that where their mistake is the fact that the way the guild works. Now, Nick, I encouraged you to do this, but I didn't know if you did it or not, because like I said, you were off and on drinking a lot back then. But I encourage anybody, when you finish writing something, take the $20. Back then, you had to make a copy, put it in an envelope, and mail it to yourself and also to the guild with $20 or still $20. Now you do it electronically. And then it's registered, and anybody who tries to fuck with you, they can't fuck with you because the script is there for you. Now, where Adam and Fax thought they had a shot at taking Nick out was when you rewrite something. If you rewrite it, I believe it's more than 80% of the words rewritten or 75% of the words rewritten. If you can figure out how to prove it, you can win. But they didn't rewrite that much of it.
No, it was arbitration. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
So they tried to take me to arbitration and squeeze me out of the goddamn thing. And they lost, of course, because it was like my entire fucking idea.
And so I don't mean to keep going with this because this is important. So for those of you who have never been to an arbitration, it's a fascinating thing. It's basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to settle something beforehand, but you have somebody there who's making the decision. And normally, a lot of times, you're in two separate conference rooms, and there's somebody going back and forth, or were you in the same room?
I wasn't even a part of it.
You weren't there.
No,
you put a representative there.
Yeah.
Okay. And so here they are. They try to take you out of it, but Jamie is the star. Can't he say to them, listen, stop. This guy did it.
No. That's what I was like, dude, what's happening, man? Like, get my back on this. And he was just like, I just stayed out of it. I was like, good grief, man. And so, yeah, we arbitrated. They lost. Then we shared credit.
Now, what happened was you had the writing credit and the story. No, Jamie had the story credit, right?
I think we both had story by.
Yeah, so written by you, Adam and Fax, story by you and Jamie. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then this is my favorite part. I don't even know if you know this. So the movie gets made, it does well. We go to the premiere. I see fucking Fax and Adam. And Fax comes up to me and he's like, hey, man, sorry about that. Like, you totally should have gotten credit. And I was like, fuck you. Like, what? Why did you drag me through this shit, man? And he was like, whatever. He was fine. But it was just like, Come on, dude. But arbitration's nasty. I've seen it happen a lot, man. I mean, I've been working with Adam Sandler for 15 years, and you know, I've seen him and his writers, I've seen them get arbitrated, and it's like just insane. Like all of my stuff, I'm like, yeah, like I've co-written stuff where people are like, oh, you should take the other guy's name off. I'm like, no, f*** it. I'm like, he just, you know, he did part of it. I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and life's too short, man.
Well, I was saying today that it's very rare when you do a collaboration with anybody and it's 50-50. Even your best friend and the most loving person in your life, it's very rare where each person does an equal amount of heavy lifting.
Right.
But in your case, the studio brought Fax and Adam in to change the kind of tone of the project. Now, when they were trying to take you out of it, were they also encouraging them to take you out of it as an actor?
Well, they obviously rewrote it, so, I mean, it was just a vehicle for Jamie, where it used to be like a two-hander with me and Jamie, so I got clipped out of that, and then they just threw me in like a smaller, like, supporting role, which was fine. Like, I understood that. I wasn't stupid, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna be one of those people that, I mean, I wasn't a name or anything at the time.
I remember having this meeting at Warner Brothers with the president of Warner Brothers Pictures at the time. And it's an incredible moment. I asked him, I said, why is it that, you know, Malibu's Most Wanted did $35 million at the box office, right? Or something like that.
It was something like that, yeah, 30 or 40.
And the budget of the movie was something like ridiculous, like $10 million or something. So it was a profitable movie for them. And then back then there was DVD, which is huge. People don't realize that. Like movies like Dane Cook's Employee of the Month made $80 million in DVDs. You know, back then that was a big business. Now, obviously
it was a
not.
huge business.
So movie made tons of money. It was like, and he shared that it was one of their most profitable movies that year, even though they had big budgeted, huge movies. And I said, how come you never hear you guys talking about it? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, Barry, which is sexier to talk about in a room, Batman or Malibu's Most Wanted? I'll never forget that.
That's interesting.
And so, like, even though they had a property that was making money, they wouldn't talk about it as much because it was more prestigious or gave them more respect to talk about something else.
Right.
So you're doing that process, and you're going up against Fax and Adam, but your friend Jamie Kennedy doesn't end up fighting for you. How does that affect your friendship with him?
I mean, I love Jamie. He's like a brother to me. I mean, it was one of those things where it was like, you know, I mean, you know, he was caught in a tough spot, you know. It was like, these are his showrunners. He's got a show. It's doing well. You know, I don't know what happened behind the scenes. He might have said something, you know what I mean? But I think he was just caught in a tough spot. I mean, I get over stuff. I don't hold like grudges like that. I mean, Jamie I love, and I know him very well, and I know who he is as a person, you know.
What was the next time in your life where the roles were reversed, and how did you handle it? Where somebody came to you and on a project you were doing, they said, "Hey, they're f***ing me here. They're trying to do this to me. They're trying to do that to me." And what did you do?
I did this. I had my show Pretend Time on Comedy Central, and we did 2 seasons, and the second season did really well. It was starting to like really take off. We got like a 1.8, which at the time that's, you know, like,
huge for Comedy Central.
It's huge.
Comedy Central, if you got a 2 rating, you were like God.
Yeah, so I'm at a 1.8.
And that basically means that, it can mean that 2% of the television sets in the United States are tuned into that, or it can mean that there's an average of 2 million people or so watching every week. So depending on which thing Nick's describing, but we'll keep going.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. So anyway, Show's starting to take off. Network comes to me. They're like, hey, here's the deal. We want to pick the show up again for a 3rd season, but we want to fire the creator. My buddy Tom, who came in, he was also the director.
Tom Kamen, which is one of your original...
Tom Giannis.
Oh, Tom Giannis, okay.
So he had come to me with the show. He's like, hey, I want to do this show with you. I was like, okay. Anyway, long story short, they were like, we want you to fire Tom, and then, we'll pick up the show. And I said, I'm not doing that. And they were like, well, then we're not picking up the show. And I was like, I guess I don't have a show then. So I gave up my own TV shows. They wanted me to fire my friend. And I said no, and I gave up the show.
I want to ask you something here.
Please do. That's the point of this.
I don't know the answer to this. That's the point of it, too. Let's pretend the roles were reversed. Tom is you, and you're Tom. And they go to Tom, and he says the same thing that you say. And then he comes to you and he says, Nick, I'm not doing the show. They want to take you out. Are you the kind of person who says to Tom, it's your show. I'm going to survive. I'll figure it out. I don't want you to lose your show because of me. Or are you the kind of person that says, yeah, thank you so much for doing that for me?
I would say keep the show.
Right?
Yeah.
What did Tom say to you?
He never knew about that went down. He just thought the show got canceled. He never knew that I did that.
When did he know?
He never did. He still doesn't know.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm amazing.
I'm like speechless because there's a power in having information and not sharing it. There's an incredible power about it. It's like when you find out that somebody, let's say, nobody's going to say that somebody says you're an asshole and they don't like you, but you know that they don't know that you know, and they come up to you and they hug you and you hug them back and you're like, and they don't know, but you know. There's a power to that that's incredible. What was your motivation for not telling him that? I'm just curious because it's fascinating to me.
I just didn't want him to have to deal with that, or I don't know.
You didn't want him to be heard.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible, Nick. That's I've done like 300 of these things, and that's one of the most. That's an incredible story. That's amazing. And you but the thing with the power of the information is you hold it in your whole life and your career. So it's almost like you know how people say you're living with a lie and you hold it in the whole time? Well, you're living with something that's a piece of information that you did something so wonderful for somebody. You let them feel like everything was okay and we both were taken out together.
Right.
But you every time you see him, you know that, and he doesn't know that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, I'm gonna keep going. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm f***ing sweet.
I love your stories. I have this fond memory of you as well, where I saw you at the Aspen Comedy Festival, or was it the defunct other festival that Bud Friedman
Well,
did?
which one? No, it was Aspen.
Aspen. And I saw you perform, I think, in a... I don't know if you had a ski hat on or whatever the hell it was, but you were like... You were always like just so true to yourself. And you came off stage and I was like, man, I am just blown away by you. You're going to be like a huge star. I don't know if you remember that or not. Like the first thing I said to you was like, there's just something about you that's really, really special.
I think it was 1996. So for those of you watching, I started stand-up out of high school in Minnesota when I was 18. And I did an open mic. And 6 months later, I got picked as one of the top new comics in the country by HBO in Aspen. And I'd only been doing it for 6 months. And I'll never forget that. And that's where we first met. And I had a different manager at the time, Dave Becky.
Well, you didn't have him then.
I didn't have him then, but he signed me One of my favorite moments.
Well, I wanted to share this. So we both, Dave, who's at 3 Arts and great manager, and myself, apparently I didn't know he was interested in you, but I told Nick how much I love what he did and how much I would be honored to work with him. But he ended up signing with Dave and 3 Arts at the time. And Dave was a young manager, and he was just starting to work out of New York. As a matter of fact, I walked around New York with him, helping him find his office and his furniture. And Nick is probably about to tell an incredible story that was also a huge part of my life and my career.
It was amazing. I've got 2 stories. So I get this Aspen Comedy Festival. So when I started stand-up the year before, I'd read an article in the paper about 2 comedians from Minnesota that got the Aspen Comedy Festival. And I was interested in comedy, but I was doing like more improv. So I read this article, and I'm like, what is this? I'm like, these comedians got this festival. So I was like, I want that. I want to do that. So I started stand-up, and then 6 months later, I got the festival, which was insane. And I remember when I started Minnesota, and for those like young comics out there, I remember starting stand-up, and I said, what's the fastest way I can succeed? And I was like, be clean, which I'm not anymore. Be clean, don't do local jokes, local references, and write a joke that you can tell in any state, anywhere, and it'll work. So I just formulated this act that you could tell anywhere. It was clean, and I just hustled and busted my ass, got this festival, and I'm sure everybody in the industry was like, who the fuck is this kid? And I remember Dave Becky called my house, my mom's apartment in St. Paul, Minnesota. And my mom's like, who is this? He's like, is Nick there? Hands me the phone. I'm like, who is this? He's like, my name's Dave Becky. I'm a manager. I work at 3 Arts. We work with Chris Rock. He goes, I heard you got the festival. And I go, yeah. He goes, how long you been doing it? And I go, 6 months. And then I'll never forget this. He goes, did a guy named Barry Katz call you? And I go, no. And he goes, okay, good. He goes, can you get on stage tomorrow? And I go, yeah. He goes, I'm getting on a plane tonight. I'll see you tomorrow. I go on stage, have a great set. We go out to dinner afterwards. He's like, I want to sign you. I go, okay, great. And I looked at him and I go, do me a favor. And he goes, what? And I go, don't fuck me over. And he goes, I won't. I go, no, I'm fucking serious. Don't fuck me over. And he goes, I won't. Signs me. We go to Aspen. I did great, had great sets. That's where we met. And then afterwards, I was up for a couple TV shows. I didn't get them. And then he's like, you know, you should move to New York. I can't represent you if you live in Minnesota. So I go, okay. So I make all these plans to move to New York. I have everything lined up. I'm supposed to leave for New York in a week. Dave Becky calls me up. He goes, hey, what's up? Yeah, I got to let you go, man. You're just too young. This isn't going to work. And I go, I'm moving to fucking New York in a week because you told me to. And he goes, oh, shit. Sorry about that. And I go, yeah. And it's my fucking birthday. And he's like, oh, shit, really? And I go, yeah. And he goes, oh, all right. Well, sorry, man. Happy birthday. And hung up the phone. So I moved to New York. I'm like, what the fuck? So pissed. So I moved to New York, sleeping on my friend's floor. And I fucking go to the Comedy Cellar. And I'm hanging out. And I run into a guy named Vincent Nastri. He used to work with Barry. Vincent comes up to me. He goes, Swardson, what's going on? I go, nothing. He goes, did you move here? And I go, yeah. I had met Vincent in Aspen. He goes, are you still with Dave Becky? And I go, no, he fucking fired me. He goes, wait a minute. You don't have a manager? And I go, no. He's like, come to the office tomorrow. We'll fucking sign you. And I came to the office and met with Barry and Vincent. They signed me immediately. It's just the look on Vincent's face. He's like, wait a minute. You're free? I was like, yeah. He's like, let's do this immediately.
It was an amazing time.
And then Barry looks at me. This is one of my favorite moments. He goes, you know what I see in you? He goes, you know what you're going to be? You know who you remind me of? And I go, like Jim Carrey? He's like, no. I go, Adam Sandler? He's like, no. I go, who? And he goes, you're going to be the next Sean Penn. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, the next Sean Penn. I'll never forget that.
What I saw in you at that time was I saw this guy who had this dramatic side to him and this comedic side. A person who had like a really tough life, but also had the comedy shielding the pain. And I remember before I said that with you, I had, for some reason, that week before, I don't know why, I watched again Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I saw how Sean Penn was this actor who could do anything.
Right.
And I thought that you could play any over-the-top character, but also be a dramatic actor. And to be honest with you, people might say, well, what the fuck is he talking about? But I feel like if there was a possibility to completely clean the slate on anything you've ever done in your life, and you started your career today focusing on dramatic roles, I think you'd be one of the greatest dramatic actors out there. I think you have an amazing thing for that, but you've never really gone in that direction. Do you disagree?
No, I totally agree. I just did a movie. It comes out this year. I did a movie last year with Josh Duhamel, Olivia Munn, Dax Shepard, a bunch of people. And it's kind of a dark comedy. And there's a scene where my character's, goofy, but grounded and really dark. And there's a scene where my character breaks down and has a complete, loses it. So I'm in this scene, I'm taped to a tree, and it's a whole long story, but I just completely break down and start crying and screaming and yelling at this other character. And the fucking crew was just dead silent. And afterwards, they're like, cut. And the crew was just sitting there and then people just started clapping. So they were like, oh my God. We just know you as Nick, running around the set, being crazy. And they were just, everybody was like, Jesus, man. And I was like, yeah. I go, there's a darkness and it's dark. But they were blown away. They were just like, holy shit. And then Todd Phillips, director who did The Hangover and everything, he saw a screening of the movie and emailed me. It's like, that's the best thing I've ever seen you do. It was crazy.
Yeah, so that's what I saw in you. High five. All right, I want to keep going here. So I want to talk about relationships, because a lot of people don't understand how important they are. And the amazing thing about you is you form these relationships that last the test of time. And that thing you did with Jack is probably a reason why they last the test of time. So how do you do it? What is it that other comics haven't figured out in the acting world and in the comedy world that you've figured out to create these bonds that last a lifetime and they're like the things that keep on giving. They just keep giving and giving and giving, but you're adding value to everything you're doing with these people, but they're giving you value.
Right.
How do you do that?
There's no bullshit with me. So I just slowly started to realize in life that it was just, life's so short, and it's I just love people. I love stories. I love getting to know people. I love hanging out. This comedy festival we're at now, Just for Laughs. I just love stuff like this. I love, seeing other comics, hugging other comics, supporting people. And I think I learned it from my dad. My dad was something, the thing that I always loved about my dad that I didn't realize, he's passed away, I didn't realize until later in life, is my dad was a phenomenal listener. So he would always absorb other people's stories and hear what other people had to say, no matter who it was. He would do it like homeless people, the mayor of St. Paul, anybody. He was just so good. And it's such a key thing to life, is like, accept people for who they are and their faults and just listen. Like, I never like dominated conversation. I just always was just fascinated to meet and know people, you know, and hear other people's stories. And, you know, I don't know. I've always just had good energy and just been positive, and, you know, I don't know. That's kind of the main thing. I just, you know, and I like to have fun. I'm also like a really fun person. And I love vodka. And
you are fun. And one of the things that's fascinating to me about you is that, unlike your peers, you talk about alcohol, you talk about drinking, you talk about your trials and tribulations. Other comics, as you know, they're in denial. It's like, you know, hey, listen, pal, you're a little bit, this is just one drink, nothing's wrong with me. But you openly talk about how, listen, I got a problem.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've had a problem ever since I was a teenager, when I went to rehab after high school.
I went to rehab in high school.
In high school.
Yeah.
And so you're one of the few guys who actually looks in the mirror and says, and I hope you don't jump over the counter and strangle me here, but you actually look in the mirror and say, you know what? I'm an alcoholic, and I'm not a sober alcoholic. And I'm figuring it out day by day, and I may stop someday, but I haven't figured it out yet. Whereas other comics that were around, they don't openly talk about their acceptance of, you're one of the few guys who accepts the fact that I'm doing something that may kill me. And I can't figure out how to stop it, so I'm just going to roll with it until I figure it out.
Well, no, that's where I disagree with you.
Okay.
Because I have figured it out. So, you know, I started, it's just long story short.
You don't have to do a long story short.
Okay. Long story short. No, when I was in high school, my parents got divorced when I was 13, and I just went off the rails. Huge drug addict, just anything. I was a fucking mess. I was dealing drugs. My friends were in gangs. It was just fucking a shit show.
If they had stayed together, would that have happened to you?
I don't know. Probably not.
Were they arguing a lot before you?
Yeah, it was just a mess. And then my mom just left, and then
I
moved in with my mom, and then she started working like 3 jobs, and then so I just had all the time in the world.
Now, do you mind if I ask, you obviously have the gene. Did your dad or your mom have the gene?
No.
Neither one of them drank?
Not really, no.
Interesting. So who had the gene in your family?
My grandfather. Both my grandfathers.
Got it. Okay.
They were awesome. So, anyway, I smoke a blunt in high school, in the school, during lunch period, in the school. So I had to light up a blunt.
So you wanted to get caught.
I didn't give a No, I didn't. I don't know what I was trying to do. Anyway, the police come. I get arrested. I have to go to court-ordered rehab. So I go and I clean up, and I lose all my friends. Start my junior year of high school with no friends at all. So I'm like, I need to get my grades up. My grades were shit. So I'm like, I'll take acting.
Why do you need to get your grades up?
Because they were shit.
But you don't
getting high every day.
But you don't give a so why do you have to get?
Well, no, because I cleaned up. So I was like, oh shit.
Okay.
I gotta get my shit together. So I take acting. So I'm like, I'll get an easy grade.
But what was your inspiration to get into acting? It couldn't have been the rehab. You had to seen something early.
I needed an easy grade. I needed a
So it had nothing to do with watching anything when you were growing up?
Nothing to do with it.
Okay.
I needed a A on my report card. I'm like, oh, acting. I could do that. So I do that. I do like beginner's theater. And then the director was like, holy shit. She's like, we're going to move you into the advanced class.
Drama or comedy?
Drama.
There you go.
So I do dramatic theater. And then an improv company came to school and like they were like, "Yeah, we're starting a high school league." So I started doing improv, and I met one of my best friends, Colton Dunn, who's on the show Superstore now, which is so funny. Me and him we were best friends. And anyway, long story short, that's how I got into acting. That was the first thing. But to answer your thing, so I've drank my whole life. But I don't drink when I film. I don't drink when I work. Like a lot of people don't realize that. So it's like I'm not drunk all the time. That's a misconception. And a long time ago, I drank because I was dealing with a lot of shit and wasn't addressing it. So there's a difference between drinking with demons and just drinking and having fun. And that's the equation that I solved a long time ago. Is I went to rehab a couple years ago, and
why? No, I'm saying why, because there's normally
like the saddest why. Why?
Sorry, Nick. So because there's normally.
Why? Why do you think? No, I wanted free food.
I'm being destroyed here. No, because there's always a moment that happens where it's like, oh, okay, I gotta go now. What happened?
I was just on a bender, and I was driving to the airport. I had 6 sold-out shows in Chicago. Driving to the airport, I'm on one, and I just start vomiting in the Uber, and I was like, oh, shit.
What's the extra charge for that?
No stars. I got no stars. So I start vomiting, and I'm like, fuck. And I'm like, they're not going to let me on this plane. So I just called my agent, and I'm like, dude, you got to cancel these shows. He's like, are you shitting me? And I go, no. I go, fuck. I'm all fucked up. And he's like, oh, God damn it. So I canceled the shows. 6 sold-out shows.
You couldn't just cancel one night and get
No,
yourself
I was just. So he's like, you have to do something. It's like, you can't just cancel. So I was like, all right, I'll go to rehab. So
and just so our audience knows, when you're Nick Swardson at that stage of the game and you're selling out 6 shows, you're not making a flat fee for your shows. You're making a fee plus percentages, and there's a chance that weekend he could have made anywhere between $15,000 and $40,000.
Yeah. So I canceled the shows. I went to rehab for a week. And so my point of this is, when I was there, you don't have a phone, you don't have a laptop, you don't have anything. So I was processing. I'm like, why the am I doing this? And I realized all this shit that I was going through. All these people I had issues with. My family had issues, all this stuff. And I just processed all that. And then I got out of rehab, and I didn't drink for a while, and I started drinking again.
What made you start drinking again? Was there something that happened?
No, it was just fun. I mean, I like drinking. But it was I dealt with all these demons, so I was drinking not out of destruction. I was drinking because now I was like enjoying it. Like I drink now, but it's like I have fun. Now I have fun, you know what I mean? I mean, I always had fun, but there was a dark shit. But there's just a big difference, between on how you drink. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a drinker, but, like I said, I don't drink when I film. Like the last movie I did, I remember Josh Duhamel was one of the leads and the director. And every night he'd be like, you want to get a cocktail? And I'm like, no, I don't drink. And he's like, what? I'm like, I don't drink when I film. And he's like, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm like, no. He's like, what about on the weekends? I'm like, no. I don't drink when I work. And he was like, oh shit, I didn't know that. And I was like, yeah, so it's like and I don't do drugs or anything. So it's like people think that it's like, oh, Nick's just tornado, but I'm actually not. And it's like, I don't drink recklessly. Like I'll sip a cocktail, but like I don't do shots anymore. I don't do just stupid shit. I don't like. I'm not doing like Jaeger bombs or shit.
But why people don't understand it is because, look, I didn't drink soda for 4 years. And I came up here and I just had one soda while I was before one podcast because I was tired. I thought I can just have one. and I'm looking at the soda on the table, and I can say to you, this is probably my 10th soda since I've been up here.
Oh.
So, and soda is the worst thing for you.
It's terrible.
And so the reason why people look at you and say, what? While you're working, is because there's that thing, that desire to have it, and to go like an 8-week shoot or a 12-week shoot and not, like, let's say I was addicted to, which I am apparently, to soda.
Right.
Let's say I went, somebody says you got to go 8 weeks during the shoot and you can't have one. I know I could do it because I did it before, but for you, is that what it is? Because you can do it, you can quit it and go back to it and go back? Like,
yeah, I have complete control over it.
Because most people can't do that.
No, I know.
Like
that's the thing. It's like, I can do that. You know what I mean? Like, I could go a year without, it's not, I never have to have it. It was never about that. It was never like, I had like just a desperation. It was just, I just like drinking. It's just really fun.
Like I was with Jim Jeffries at the Comedy Store, and again, I would say this if he were here, he was over the line. He was like, really, he had a lot to drink, and he was having a blast, and he was so funny and mixing around with people, and I'm thinking, my God, this guy's got a television show. Every day he's got to shoot it. And then I went to the show the next day, and the guy's like a rock. He's like, he's a leader of men and women. He's on there. He's present. There's no evidence of anything that I saw.
Right.
The red light goes on. He's incredible. In between takes, he's talking to people. He's improvising. I just don't even know how that's possible, but he did it.
Yeah.
But you don't do things that way.
I don't do things that way now. Well, one of my favorite things is like, I also eat super healthy. I don't eat dairy. I cut dairy out. I don't eat sugar. I cut soda out 8 years ago. I eat, like, I'm actually really healthy. But one of my favorite moments is there's a juice bar by my house in Los Angeles. And I go there every day. I'm big on juice. So one time I go and I do all these shots at the juice bar. So I do like a shot of algae, a shot of aloe, a fucking vitamin B, all these. I did like 6. And so I'm like walking home, and all of a sudden, like, I don't feel well. It was just like way too healthy. It was like way too much. So I start vomiting. So I'm walking on the street vomiting. And this car of like frat guys like pulls over. And they're like, Swardson's raging. Oh my God, what a fucking legend. And I was like, no, it's aloe. Blah. No, it's wheatgrass. Blah. And they just thought I was like just ripping it at 2 p.m. It was like all like super healthy shit. It made me laugh.
All right, I want to go way back. Taking me back to, growing up. I know you talked a tiny bit about it, but growing up, where you grew up, the socioeconomic dynamic of your household, the money situation, and was there anything besides trying to get your grades up that you watched with your family or something that was a little message for the future that, wow, I could see myself, being involved in that kind of thing? And what was your first break in show business? Was it the Aspen Comedy Festival? Was it that winning thing? Or was there something that you consider more of a big break?
A break in terms of, like, in the industry?
Yeah, like I know there's a lot of questions at once, but I love the journey from when you're growing up until,
I never considered, the thing that I did, I never, like, considered acting. I only did it, like I said before, because I had to. But I was always, like, goofy. So it was all, like...
So even when you were a young kid...
My mom showed me my old yearbook from grade school. This is f***ing insane. So my old yearbook, people would sign the yearbook. So I'm reading the back page, everyone's signing it. And I would say 70 to 80% of all the people that signed it, and this is crazy, said, someday you're going to be a comedian. Someday you're going to be famous. All these signatures. And they spelled comedian wrong, of course, kids. But like 70 to 80% of my peers said that in grade school. And it's so weird. I saw that and I was like, oh my God, that's f***ing bizarre. But I was always goofy because I was like, I was small. I was like the runt kid. And I went to like inner city schools. So I just felt like just to get by, I had to be like weird.
So when you say inner city, you were like one of the few white kids there?
I mean, it was, interracial, but, it was just, there was some tough fucking kids, and I was just small and I was just goofy just to kind of, make people laugh and not get punched in the face.
And so, and what did you notice about your parents and relationships that sort of shaped you throughout, your relationships as you were a teenager?
I mean, my parents were both funny. They were dry, senses of humor. But I was also the youngest out of 3 kids. So it was, when you're the youngest, you just always trying to get attention and shit.
And you did improv to start off. Like, how did that come about? Was that the acting class, or was that something before?
Acting class, and then a touring company called Comedy Sports came through. And they're like, we have a high school league. And so me and my buddy Colton joined it. And we did this high school league and competed against other high schools. And then they were like, we want you guys to be a part of the actual company and be like main stage. So these are like performers who've been performing forever. So we did that. We were main stage, me and him, my buddy Andy Ritchie, rest in peace. We joined the main stage, and I started doing that. And then I looked down on stand-up, actually. I thought it was corny because I was like an improv snob. So I was like, we're making shit up as we go. I'm like, stand-up, they already know what they're going to fucking say. I'm like, it's fucking lame. And then the improv company folded. So they got bankrupt and everything. So I was 18. I had no outlet to perform in. So I was like, oh, fuck it. I'll try stand-up. So I told my buddies, I'm like, let's go do the open mic. So they no-showed. So it was just me. So I wrote 3 minutes.
They all no-showed.
Yeah. So it's just me. And I had my little notebook. And I'd written out a semblance of an act. And this is fucking crazy, too. This is a side note. You got to hear this. This is crazy. I was working at Planet Hollywood at the time. I was a busboy. Planet Hollywood, Mall of America.
The Mall of America is the largest mall in America.
Yeah, in Minnesota. And I'm writing in my notebook, my act. And then I wrote on a piece of paper, I go, someday I'm going to be on the wall in Planet Hollywood. And then I did my set. It went great. They were like, holy fuck. That was fucking insane. They're like, keep coming back. Whatever. Long story short, jump cut to 15 years later. And they're putting my hands and picture on Planet Hollywood in Times Square. And I just started crying. Because I was like, holy shit. I remember writing that, someday I'm going to be on the fucking wall. And there I am, on the wall.
Amazing. So amazing.
Crazy.
One of the things about you that people don't know, and I witnessed when you were a teenager in your early 20s, you would always come into the Boston Comedy Club, my club in New York, and it always felt like you were doing a new set. Like you just kept writing and writing and writing when all the other comics would go on and do the same shit. You seem to do a new set every week.
I was writing constantly. I would write nonstop. And everybody should. If you're a comic, I mean, especially, just write. And also, like, write anything down. Like, any premise, any idea. I would write jokes. There's a fucking joke that I close with. I just did my 5th special for Netflix. Which is fucking insane. And I did my 5th special. And my closing joke is fucking murders. Like, and it was a fucking throwaway that I had thought of 10 years ago that I had found in a notebook. And I was like, oh, I remember this. And I didn't know how to do it. Didn't make sense at the time. But now it's my closing, just this huge closing joke on my entire tour and special. And it was a throwaway that I thought of 10 years ago in the bathroom of the Houston Laugh Stop. I was opening for David Cross. And I go, hey, I have this idea. David's like, yeah, it's fucking hilarious. and I just told it as like a one-liner a couple times and just threw it away, but I'd written in the notebook. So my point being, everything down. Just write it, any thought, any premise, anything. It doesn't make sense now. might make sense later. So it's very, very important. But yeah, back in the day, I used to write all the time. That's one thing. Diane, who used to run Knuckleheads, which was a comedy club again in Mall of America. And I would go and do my sets there, the open mic. And I would come off stage. And I'd be like, oh, wasn't that great? And Diane would go, yeah, that's great. Write another one for tomorrow. I'm like, what do you mean? She was like, that was a good set. Write another one. And I'm like, okay. And they would force me. Also, this guy, Dan Krolchek, they would just force me to write. So Dan would go, I'm going to write down 3 things, do jokes about them on stage. You can't look at them until you get up there. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I don't want to do that. And he's like, well, then you're not getting any more stage time. And I'm like, fuck. So he would write down a bunch of shit. I would go up there and I'm like, Jesus Christ. And I would just have to I would just come up with it. So they just ingrained in me to just keep writing. So that's what I did. That's all I did in New York. I just sat there and write every day.
I want to read a quote to you that I love, if you don't mind.
Yes.
From you. The biggest people I've met in this business are the most genuine f***ing people. I've worked with Adam Sandler. I've met Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Ben Stiller, Will Ferrell. They're all the most genuine, cool guys on the planet. They're all generally just who they are, but very driven. They know what they want. They're all products of working hard and serendipity. And yeah, there's people who feel pressure to look a certain way. But in the comedy world, funny is funny, and funny always wins. If you're really funny, you're undeniable. If you're funny, people will gravitate towards you and they'll help you. But LA is not a place to come grow and develop. It's not a great city for that. Grow and develop somewhere else, and then come here with your shit together.
Yeah, sums it up. That was the best advice I ever got, was to move to New York instead of LA. And everybody said that. I remember I had all this heat. I was coming off the comedy festival, all this shit. And I remember all these comics. I'm like, I'm going to move to LA. And they were all just like, no, don't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, no. They're like, how much time do you have? I'm like, I've got 15 good minutes. And they were like, no, move to LA when you're a fucking headliner. When you have an hour at least, move to LA. That's when you move. You don't move to LA to develop everywhere else, but not LA. And that was the best advice. And I always tell people that, Minnesota comics, they're always like, I think I'm going to move to LA. And I'm like, no. I'm like, how long have you been doing it? 2 years? I'm like, no. Stay here. It's a fucking great stage time. Just build yourself at work. You know what I mean? Build it up. Then go to LA. It's like, you don't want to, you don't want to throw yourself in that fucking shit.
How'd you know you were ready? What happened that told you were ready for LA?
When I signed with ICM, because I was an actor, a lot of comics aren't really like actors.
ICM, one of the biggest agencies in the world.
Yeah, so I did your showcase. Barry used to have legendary showcases at the Laugh Factory.
I used to do a showcase every year where I would bring out people from New York and invite all the industry, and it was a crazy madhouse.
Yeah, it was insane.
I'd invite agents and publicists, lawyers, film and television executives.
Yeah.
It was always sold out.
Yeah, it was nuts. So I fucking murdered. I always made him give me the best spot too. I'd be like, put me on third or fourth. And he always did.
And what Nick's alluding to is there's 2 spots that are spots that you don't want. The first spot you don't want on a showcase is the first spot, because what happens is you don't know how the MC is going to do. The host is normally somebody who you put on who's on a showcase who is newer in the business, and people aren't looking to them to do much. You give them their 5 minutes up front, let them bring on the acts, and they're just glad to be there on a showcase of this magnitude. But the first spot is the toughest spot because nobody's ready for it. And it's very few people can take that first spot and turn it around to something special. And then what's also a tough spot, if it's a club where they collect checks at the end, is the check spot, which is the last spot. And even if it isn't the check spot, the last spot is tough because you got 9 people going on before you or 8 going on before you. But there are some people who really thrive in that last spot, because what they do is they say to themselves, okay, everybody's doing 7 minutes, but I'm the last guy. I'm going to do 10 or 12 minutes. F*** it, I'll have extra time. They're not going to, what are they going to do, cut the mic on me? It's the show's over. And they would do more time, and sometimes that last spot would work for certain people.
Well, like Dane would usually do it, right?
Yes, he would close.
Yeah, and so I got off stage after my set, and Andy Cohen from ICM was an agent. And I walked off stage, he gave me his card. He's like, you have an agent? I go, no. He's like, we'll sign you right now. He's like, where are you living? I go, New York. He's like, well, that's going to change. So I was like, all right, good. So that was the impetus for me to move to LA.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, 6 degrees of separation. I'm going to mention some names or some things, and I just want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Could be a word, a story, a sentence, anything. Rob Schneider.
Rob Schneider. One of my best friends. Love Rob very much. One of my favorite moments. I was producing a movie called Benchwarmers. It was my first big movie that Sandler gave me to produce and a co-star in. Adam's like, you're in charge of this movie. This is your movie. Me and Sandler wrote it.
How old were you?
28.
28 years old.
I'm in charge of a $35 million movie. So Rob Schneider, bless his heart, can be difficult to work with sometimes. So Rob is on the pitcher's mound. It's a baseball movie. Rob goes, I need a joke. Oh, I want to do a joke. Where's Nick? I go to the pitcher's mound. I'm like, what's up? He's like, I want a joke here. I go, all right, why don't you say this? He's like, no. I go, all right, well then what about this? He's like, strike 2. And I go, what about this? And he goes, strike 3. And I just go f*** yourself and write your own fucking jokes the rest of the movie. Fuck. And he storms off. And the director, Dennis Dugan, was right there. Rob's like, what the f***? What got into him? And Dennis was like, that was a little disrespectful. Rob's like, what did I do?
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, I don't know that well, but I remember Sandler did a movie with Katie Holmes, and Tom would show up. It was very, very nice, very nice. And one of Adam and my mutual friends from New York, he was very bombastic. He's one of those New Yorkers, he's always loud. So Tom Cruise is sitting 10 feet from us. And our buddy goes, ask Tom if he's an alien. And I go, what? I go, shut up. And he goes, ask him if he's a fucking alien. And I go, I'm not asking if he's a fucking alien. Shut up. And he's like getting louder. And I'm like, Tom's like kind of looking over. I'm like, and he's like, come on, don't be a fucking pussy. Just go, he's right fucking there. He's got to be a fucking alien. And I was like, God damn it, shut up. So it was one moment where I was just panic attack.
Bucky Larson.
Bucky Larson is one of my favorite things of all time. We got it was just a softball for critics to fucking destroy me. And they wasted no time. 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. 0. Fucking 0.
How is that possible?
Because critics are fucking assholes. These people that criticize comedy. Comedy is the most subjective thing in the world. It's so subjective. And it's like, you know, they didn't want to find value in any of it. It's like, okay, so you're telling me Don Johnson, Steven Dorff, Christina Ricci, Kevin Nealon, these are all respected actors who love the movie, did it for nothing because they loved it. It's like you're telling me we're all wrong? We're all wrong. fucking insane. That movie's amazing. It's so good. It's so underrated. And there's there's some dramatic moments in that too. It's fucking great. It's one of the most fun I've ever had.
Will Ferrell.
Oh, Will Ferrell's amazing. I did a tour one time with Will, and it was an arena tour. And it was me and Will Ferrell, Zach Galifianakis, and Dimitri Martin. We did 10 college arenas. It's still the biggest show I've ever played. And it was 25,000 people. It was insanity. And I remember we were backstage, all of us, and they would always be filming stuff for Funny or Die. And, we all just had a blast. And Zach pulled his pants down, full naked. And he was like, "Hey guys, is this cool?" And we just started laughing. So I pulled my pants down and hugged Zach naked. And then Will just immediately pulled his pants down, full naked. And we just all hugged. And that's the kind of guy Will Ferrell is. He is not ever going to shy away from pulling his pants down and hugging you. He just jumped right in.
The late Phil Hardman.
I don't know Phil at all. I never met him, never knew him. He was just somebody that, he was one of those people that I don't think people really appreciated until he was gone. And then when you look back, you're like, oh, this guy's probably the best sketch performer in the history of sketch comedy. I mean, this guy, you just never really realized it, that he was just the glue in so many sketches. So talented. Yeah, that was a really horrible loss for comedy.
Yeah. 30 Minutes or Less.
30 Minutes or Less is one of my favorites. That's where I became very close with my brother, Danny McBride. And that's one of my favorites. That's an underrated movie too. Me, Aziz Ansari, Jesse Eisenberg. My buddy Ruben Fleischer directed it. So this is funny. This is 20 years ago. I did a short film with Mary Lynn Ricecub and Karen Kilgariff. It's called Girls Guitar Club. And they were like, "Yeah, we're just going to do this little short film. Will you be in it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." So I'm like, "Who's directing it?" And they're like, "This guy, Ruben Fleischer. This is his first thing. It's a friend of ours or something." And I was like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah." So that was the first thing we did 20 years ago. And then we're on set of this fucking huge movie for Sony, and I'm co-starring, he's directing. Ben Stiller produced it. And we just sat there. I'm like, "This is weird, right?" He's like, "Yeah." And then a side story. I don't know if you remember this. This is fucking insane. I was in your office. Vincent, again, one of the managers at the time, hands me a headshot. He goes, "Will you sign this for a fan?" It was the first autograph I'd ever signed. I go, "Yeah, who's it to?" He's like, "This kid, Jesse Eisenberg. He's Haley Eisenberg's brother. And he's like 14 years old. He saw you on Comedy Central." So I signed it to Jesse. Cut to 15 years later. And I was watching this independent film. And it was like Jesse Eisenberg in the credits. I'm like, I know that name. So I see him on the streets of New York. And I go, "Hey, Jesse Eisenberg?" And he goes, "Nick Swardson." And I go, "Yeah." I go, "What's up?" And he's like, "Hey, huge fan. You signed that picture for me, and I had it on my wall for years and years. I still have it." He's like, he quoted my jokes still 10 years later. And he was like, yeah, huge fan. So I'm on the set of 30 Minutes or Less, co-starring with Jesse Eisenberg in a fucking movie. And it was another one of those things where I'm like, this is weird, right? And he's like, "Yeah, this is weird." I'm like,
well, Jess used to have him and his family come into the club all the time. I used to take care of him. He used to love
really?
comedy.
Jesse's a sweetheart. So talented.
Amazing. Chris Rock.
Chris, I love. I've worked with him several times. Two quick things. I'm on the set of Grown Ups 2, which I'm co-producing. And, I'm more of a joke writer producer. So I just help punch up and stuff.
I remember coming to the set.
Oh, yeah, you're with Sherry.
Sherry O'Terry, and I see Nick, and he's walking to me. He's got the headset on and the belt and the walkie-talkie.
Sure.
I'm like, what the is going on here? It's like, this guy really does dive headfirst into these things.
Yeah.
And you're like, it was crazy.
Yeah, man. So it was hard because I was, doing punch up. And I remember Chris was doing a scene, and I walk up and I pitch him a joke. I'm like, hey, it'd be funny. What if you said this? And he just stared at me. And I was like, or not. And I just walked away.
I thought you were going to say it. He said, strike one.
Yeah. No, it was just like so hard. Certain people, it's just so hard to pitch them jokes. It's just like so intimidating.
David Spade.
David Spade is I would say my top 3 best friends. I love David very, very much. David and I are very, very close. And I have a million David stories. One of my favorites is we were in Vegas for the Super Bowl, and he's hitting on some chick. And I'm with my buddy, and he goes, dude, look at David's watch. That watch is sick. It's like, that's like a $50,000 watch. I go, really? And I go, Davey, can I borrow your watch before I had a watch? And he goes, yeah, whatever. So I put it on. I'm like, yeah. So then him and Sandler fly out. And my buddy goes, you didn't give the watch back? And I go, no, it. I'll just wear it for a while. So a couple weeks go by with my buddy, and he goes, does you still have David's watch? Does he know that? And I go, yeah, of course he knows it. He goes, you should probably just tell him, just in case. So, okay, so I text him. I go, you know I have your Rolex, by the way. And he goes, what? The fuck? I just filed insurance because I just got a check for $50,000. He goes, thought it was stolen. I go, oh, so I can just keep it then, right? He was like, no, that's illegal. What the is wrong with you? I go, I don't know. I thought you had it. And he goes, no, I'm going to come by right now and pick it up. I'm like, oh, sorry about that. I gave him his watch back.
Terry Bernardino.
Oh, God. Terry is one of my favorites. Yeah, that was my character on Reno 911. And one of my favorite stories. The creators of the show, Carrie Kinney, Thomas Lennon, Ben Garant.
From the state.
Carrie calls me up, and they're like, we have a TV show called Reno 911. We want you to be on it. I go, great, what is it? They go, it's a cop show. I'm like, okay, am I a cop? They're like, no. I go, what am I doing? They go, here's the deal. We need you to create a character, a criminal, for us to arrest. We're just going to improvise the entire show. So we need you to create a criminal. I go, okay, what if I'm a prostitute? They're like, yeah, and I'm like a gay prostitute, like fucking super gay, and I'm on roller skates. And they're like, yeah, make it fucking crazy, because this show's gonna get canceled right away. So I was like, okay. So I created the character, and 7 years later, I'm fucking doing this and a movie. I was like, I thought this was getting canceled. They're like, no, it's a hit. And I'm like, and they're like, you're the most popular character. I was like, well, it's like I'm not taking these roller skates off for a while.
The day you knew you made it and you weren't ever going to do anything else but this business.
Probably when I did Grandma's Boy. Adam Sandler saw me on Comedy Central, and I used to do jokes about my grandma. Sandler was in bed with his wife and saw my special, wrote my name down, came into the office. He's like, does anybody know who the Nick Swardson is? Has anybody heard of this kid? And the young guys in the audience are like, oh, yeah. I mean, the office. They're like, yeah, Nick Swardson. He was like, okay. They're like, it's funny. Calls his manager. They track me down. Like, Adam Sandler wants to meet you. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever, bullshit. And they're like, no. So I go in the office, and Adam's like, I saw your special. It was really fucking funny. I go, thanks. We had a lot of mutual connections. Lucian Hold from the comic strip.
The late Lucian Hold.
The late Lucian Hold, God rest his soul. The comic strip was my home club in New York, and it was Adam's home club also. So we just bonded, and he goes, I have a script called Grandma's Boy. It's PG-13. We need it to be rated R. F***ing hard R crazy. Will you rewrite it? I heard you're a writer. And I was like, yeah. So I rewrote it, and they were like, him and Alan Covert, who was the lead, they were like, love it. And it was just, after that, we made the movie. It became a f***ing cult phenomenon. And, Adam got me bench warmers, and I just started. Then it was just off to the races,
Karaoke.
Karaoke?
Mm-hmm.
That, like, the thing of singing karaoke?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. I sing karaoke sometimes. And one time I was singing karaoke and I got caught up in the curtain behind the stage, wipe out, and smash my knee, get drunk, obviously, blackout, wake up, my knee is huge. It's all purple and so I go to the doctor and they're like, Jesus Christ. So they're like, what happened? And I was like, I got drunk and got wrapped up in a karaoke curtain and wiped out. And they were like, how old are you? And I'm like, 40. They're like, Jesus, man.
Ben Stiller.
Oh, Ben's awesome. I love Ben. Yeah, Ben and I, we've never been on camera together, which I'm bummed about. That would be awesome. But Ben was always so supportive of me. Always. And one of the worst was he called me up and he was like, I'm doing this movie, Tropic Thunder. I really want you to be in it. I go, okay. I'd love it. He sent me the script. I'm like, yeah, this thing's insane. He goes, yeah, it's going to be nuts. And Sandler called me 2 days later. And he goes, I'm doing this movie, the Zohan. Don't mess with the Zohan. I want you to be in it with me. And I was like, when does it shoot? He's like, these months. And it was the exact same months as Tropic Thunder. And I was like, fuck! So I had to call Ben back. I was like, dude. He's like, what's up? I'm like, I can't do the movie. It's like, why? I go, Adam called me to do Zohan. And he was like, it's all good, dude. I get it. I'm like, I'm sorry. He's like, it's all good, man. Don't worry. I'm like, can you move it? He's like, no, I can't move it. I was like, fuck. Where are you shooting? He's like, Hawaii. I'm like, fuck! But Ben was really cool about it. And then they put me in 30 minutes or less years later. So
Conan O'Brien.
Oh, Conan's the best. Conan, I've done the Conan show maybe more than any other show. And Conan's always intimidating. He's so smart and he's so funny. And God, he was the only show back in the day. I did it when he used to tape in New York. And that was the only show that let me do this joke. And it was my favorite joke at the time. It's still one of my favorite jokes. But it was the only show that let me do it. And the joke is, I have a cat, and he's sick right now. He has diarrhea. And I took him to the vet, and the vet's like, well, what have you been feeding him? And I'm like, diarrhea. Every other show, no. Tonight Show, no. Letterman, no. Kimmel, no. Every other show, Conan was like, yeah. It's the only show that let me do it.
Giving away your clothes.
Oh. When I used to live in Venice, and I was making money, and I would spend a lot of money on clothes. Now I don't give a fuck. But back in the day, I used to buy all these expensive clothes. And I was moving So I just decided to just put a garbage bag of clothes in the alley. It was like expensive stuff. This was when I was like wearing diesel. So I just put like all this stuff in the alley. And then there's a lot of homeless people in Venice. So then I would go like over the course of weeks and I would see homeless people with like diesel jeans and like a $200 diesel jacket. And I'm sure everybody in the neighborhood was so confused. Like, why is this guy with shit on his face wearing a $500 outfit? And all these homeless people are just walking around in like amazing European clothes.